different stages of business require different stages of self-exploration. When you first do your first 6 figures, that's going to be you. Like, you shouldn't be hiring too many people. Maybe you hire an assistant, 2 people. That's you. You need to figure out your mindset barriers. You need to figure out what issues you have with money. You need to figure out what issues you have with being able to sell or conversational flow, all the things that comes with the first 6 figures. Once you get to 7, 8, 9, it changes, right? As you grow, each level brings its own challenges. And honestly, they get bigger. So once you get to the point where you have a team, now I have to provide for this team. Now I have to lead. Now I have to figure out how to be able to get people to be self-motivated to work and have this vision within the container that I'm creating. And so all of it requires different levels of skill, but also different levels of self-development. My name is Sarah Saffari. I'm the founder of a consultancy for personal trainers called CEOwned. And today's show, we're going to talk about ascension in your business and in your life by doing the work.
In the world that you live in the world that you work in of entrepreneurship, particularly online coaching, helping other individuals start and level up their own livelihood, their own business. Mm-hmm. Is there one particular barrier to entry you see right now you're experiencing? If so, what is it? And like, how are you actually seeing or helping people push through that and get on the other side of that?
Yeah. So what's the one barrier to entry with entrepreneurs specifically? Mm-hmm. I would say themselves, like definitely themselves is the biggest barrier. And the reason being is you can have all the tools in the books and you can understand them, you can have the skill. And I think ultimately, if you haven't been able to work through your own stuff, a lot of it will show up in business. And I would say specifically and especially in your first 6 figures or your first multiple 6 figures, that number being and pertaining to the reason why that when you're building the first multiple 6, it's a lot of you and it's a lot of you doing the building, and you don't have the team yet. And you do have to build that, and you do have to overcome a ton of things. So whether that's problems with mindset or money or family or imposture or your own belief in yourself, whatever it may be, that reason, what it is for that person is going to be the reason why they end up not taking the leap or taking the leap and then stopping midway through and potentially going back to what they were doing because they're too afraid. And then in terms of how to be able to overcome that, again, it's going to really depend on the entrepreneur and where they're at. So it's really just tackling what the struggle is, right? So if I'll give you some examples. So if it's, I'm currently struggling with selling a high ticket offer because I feel like my package isn't worth it, because I feel like I'm not worth it, because I feel like I'm ripping people off. Whatever their story might be, it's a lot of diving into in the ins and outs of like, what is that? What is the barrier to that? Why is it that that's your story? How can we work through that? Is this just the story, or is this, is there truth to this? So for example, does your program actually suck? Is it even worth $2,000? And if it's not, then how can we go back and make sure that the value substantially supersedes the cost at which you have it? And then if there are other barriers internally, how can we overcome that as well? So I think I'm a big advocate of both internal and external change and exploration to make sure that we can address that issue head on from both perspectives if possible.
Yeah. And you bring up something really interesting out of the gate. And that was kind of this relation of a mile marker in terms of dollars and the level of success that we can have based on ourself, the individual. Why is that? What is that about, in your opinion? What is it about when we decide to start a side hustle, level up a side business, start our own business, or even just, in whatever endeavor we have before us, once we kind of scale up, once we hit certain numbers, I agree, it inevitably becomes more of a us thing than the thing. Why is that? Why is it kind of this sliding scale of, as the numbers go up, so does the need to work on ourselves? And if we want to push past those numbers, we got to push past ourselves and whatever limiting barrier we have there.
Yeah. So I think that like different stages of business require different stages of self-exploration. So for example, when you first do your first 6 figures, that's going to be you. Like, you shouldn't be hiring too many people. Maybe you hire an assistant, 2 people. That's you. You need to figure out your mindset barriers. You need to figure out what issues you have with money. You need to figure out what issues you have with being able to sell or conversational flow, all the things that comes with the first 6 figures. Once you get to 7, 8, 9, it changes, right? As you grow, each level brings its own challenges. And honestly, they get bigger. So once you get to the point where you have a team, now I have to provide for this team. Now I have to lead. Now I have to figure out how to be able to get people to be self-motivated to work and have this vision within the container that I'm creating. And so all of it requires different levels of skill, but also different levels of self-development. Am I becoming too micromanaging? Am I not allowing the team to be motivated in other ways? Am I coming in where I don't need to be because I feel the need to be needed, right? And so there's so many other things that you start exploring, right? And so many times I'll hear entrepreneurs say something like, well, I got to a point where my team could handle everything, and then I felt like I wasn't needed. And then when I went in, I was almost ruining the flow of what they were doing. And then I felt like, wow, my team doesn't need me anymore. And I give this analogy and people laugh, but it's the same thing as, your kids grow up, they go to school, they're away in college, and the mom or the dad goes like, oh shit, like, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear. It's like, crap, like now what do I do? Like I finished my job as a parent, and now like I have to do me, I do my thing. And so it's very similar with entrepreneurship. Is there always a next step of what to do next? Always. If you want to, if that's a desire, which is a whole different topic of its own, there's always room to grow, but it's always just integrating that next step and understanding yourself with each step, because that brings a different challenge.
Is it kind of the chicken or the egg thing? Is it, all right, I want to be as successful as possible. Therefore, before starting my endeavor or scaling my endeavor, I'm going to really carve out the time to work on myself so that I can kind of get ahead and really make sure, stack the conditions in my favor as much as possible, that I am going to be successful? Or do we have to hit these milestones, our first 5,000, our first 50,000, our first 100,000 plus, and then just wait and see what problems arise, what version of ourself shows up at those markers, and then work on it?
Yeah. So I don't know if you know Esther Perel, but she says something about, we learn about ourselves in the context of relationships with others. And so we can say that in relationships where so often people are like, I'm going to stay single until I figure out all the things that I need to be ready for the dating game. And once I'm ready for the dating game, then I'll go and find my perfect man or my perfect woman. So it's the same thing as saying, I'm going to go make sure I figure out all my issues, all my traumas, all the things that could hold me back. And then I'm going to go into the game of business. And so the problem with that type of thinking is that so many people will go and do that, and then they'll go into the game of business or into the game of dating, and then they'll say, oh shit, there was all these things that I could have just learned by doing that I would have never learned on doing them on my own. And so the biggest thing is, it goes back to that quote, we learn the most about ourselves in the context of relationship with other people, is that you're going to learn the most about business and yourself in the context of actually doing business, because there's nothing else that's going to put you in the position of growing and learning about yourself like doing business. So do the thing. And in the process, you're going to inevitably have to face the things that are required for you to be able to grow independently and inevitably be able to grow the business as well. Yeah,
absolutely. I want to share something with you, and I'm curious if you agree or if you have any particular input. I've been an entrepreneur now for, I guess, really going into my 6th year. officially 5. I was on that side hustle life for about a year before I left my job, almost a year. And it definitely was, all right, I get involved. I do the thing. Like you're saying, I have to have the context to really understand what is needed of this endeavor and what is needed of me in order to make that endeavor successful. And therefore, what I need to work through, what part of me personally needs to maintain, change, evolve. And it kind of just went hand in hand. But also now 5 years going into 6 years, I've learned the lesson, I've learned the necessity to kind of prioritize that and to make that a part of my professional work, to make myself as equal as often as possible priority to the professional side so that I can really kind of run parallel instead of business shoots up, personal Chase is suffering and stuck and has to play catch up, or personal Chase has a breakthrough, has an epiphany and goes on this incredible healing journey. And his business is like, wait, like none of this makes sense for us. We got to catch up. We're doing the same thing. What's going on? Yeah. Is it really that kind of running parallel game that you see serving entrepreneurs or hustlers out there the most, and or making sure we prioritize this as we go along the way?
Yeah. I think it's a parallel game. I'll give you an example. So when I first started, I was initially a trainer for a gym, and then I opened a gym in Vancouver, Canada, where I was living at the time. And, everything worked out and it worked really fast. And I knew nothing about business at the time. And I was trying to go online, but somehow, paid a coach $10K, dropped out of school and started this business at the same time, moved out of my parents' house, like all within a 2-week period. Facebook ads were really cheap at the time and it was all working out. And I was doing really well, but I had no idea how to run a business. So I didn't know how to systemize. And I didn't even like the fact that I was working 16 hours in a gym. So I had this first time contrast between golden handcuffs and feeling miserable. So I ended up just shutting it down, selling the equipment. So I'm going to start all over again online. And there was a 2-year period where I was trying to do it online. And during that period, I struggled so bad. And I kept trying and I wasn't able to do it. And I was using the same systems as everyone. And I'll give you an example. So Hansika, my business partner, her and I met in a mastermind and we're using the exact same systems. We're using the same funnels, the same script, you name it. It was verbatim, the exact same thing. And I just was not succeeding. Or I would get on a call and I would close a deal. And then I'd be like, it's working. And then the next day they'd call back and ask for a refund. I kid you not.
Oh no.
Back to back. And I was spending on ads. I was broke at the time. It just was I need this to work. And I had a call with my friend at the time, now my business partner. And I said, hey, Hansika, this is not working. No matter what I do, this isn't working. And so we continued to talk. And she just said one thing. She's just Sarah, your mindset is shit. The way that you think
it sounds
about
like a Hansika response.
She's it sucks. And I was what are you talking about? I don't believe in this voodoo stuff. You just gotta do the stuff and it's gonna work. She's okay, you can say what you want, but the reason why it's not working for you is because of that. And so I went off that phone call and originally I shrugged it off and I asked myself, well, all these things are in play and it's not working. Why is this not working? And that was the only thing that was for me, because I work very logically, that was missing at the time. And so it took me taking a step back and doing all of that work, the Sarah work, and doing so much work and rewiring and refiring my own patterns. And it was a lot of work. And I went back to it with the same systems, but a different level or a different version of Sarah. And I immediately started closing deal after deal after deal using those same systems. And so I do think that they work hand in hand. I do think that if I didn't have the skill and I had that higher level of me, it wouldn't work. But I still believe, because I saw it happen in front of me, that, that skill, which I did, but I didn't have that version of me, it also wouldn't work. So you do need both working together.
I'm curious, what was it for you? If you could put your finger on the one thing that was the biggest game changer for you, so that when you were in those moments again, like you're saying, with I had the scripts, I had the systems, I had the funnels, I had all of these tools and tactics, infrastructure, but put me in front of a client versus this other person with the same resources, the adherence wasn't the same, the close rates weren't the same, everything wasn't the same. What was it for you after doing the personal stuff? Were you able to just connect with these people? Was it the humanization aspect? Was it empathy? What was it really that triggered for you to show up differently, ask different questions, and to keep the client and to keep the business growing?
Yeah, a few things. I know you said one, but there's a few.
Fire away. Let's give them all we can.
So I definitely didn't believe in myself. And I think that's it, when you're having a conversation on the phone with somebody, it's just very obvious and people can sense that. And although I would say I'm pretty good at connecting with people and having conversations.
Absolutely.
But I was desperate. I was desperate for the sale and I needed to get it. And if I didn't, then I don't know what story I made up, but all the things that would go wrong if I didn't. And so because I was in and I don't love using buzz terms, but I was in a very much so like scarce mindset. I was in like, this has to work. And if it doesn't work, then all hell's going to break loose. I feel like the clients could feel that. And I think that's on the hierarchy, that's the biggest one. But I do have, like, if I'm fully transparent, looking back now, I can also tell you on a skills level, something that was missing that I now know what that was. And on the skills level, so that's the mindset level. On a skill set level, the reason why I was closing and they were calling back and asking for a refund, aside from me not believing in myself and the product and having that desperation, was because I was emotionally selling, but I wasn't logically selling. And so we buy first with logic, and then we use our rational brain to rationalize the sale. And so in that moment, I was getting them so hyped and excited, and they were getting off the phone and saying, "What did I just do?" And I'm like, what am I doing wrong?
Buyer's remorse maybe setting in a little bit. Yeah, we've all been there. It's like, was this the best use of my money? Did I get took? Can I get a better deal somewhere? Is this person or thing qualified? Yeah, raising both hands, been there.
Exactly. I've been there. You've been there. I think we've all been on the side of like, what did I just do? And so it's really understanding human psychology, sales, how to be able to make sure that you're making a logical sale. Like if you're selling your product at X dollar amount, why is it worth way more? Not the worth amount of, why is it worth way more than what you're selling it for? And being able to logically explain that or logically get them to understand that by asking the right questions, as well as the emotional, because the emotional is in the moment, the logical is thereafter. So I think those would be the few main things.
So then how do you let's put ourselves in kind of the shoes of, let's say, the buyer. Let's say you're selling a product, you're selling a service. What then do you do on the mindset side to ensure that your customer, your client, the recipient of your goods is going to stay satisfied so that they stay a happy customer? We all know what happens when we have happy customers. They're your walking, talking billboards, right? Referrals, all the above, but also in the sense of keeping them, but then keeping them coming back and referrals and all of that. Like what is the personal aspect? How do you have to pour mindset work into that aspect of the business to keep them and to keep them coming back?
So do you mean the mindset of the entrepreneur to make sure you're maintaining retention, or what do you see?
Yes. Because it's like we can do the things and get the success now. We can get the client, get the sale, get the yes, but the work doesn't stop there. Once that invoice clears and the contract is signed, what do we do then? How do we keep that mindset showing up so that desperation doesn't keep coming back?
I think after that, it gets a little bit easier from the mindset perspective. And I'll say this. A lot of times the struggle for entrepreneurs comes in the initial of they haven't built the know, like, and trust factor. And so they're very afraid to talk about money in the sale. Whereas on the back end of LTV and being able to actually maintain retention of a client, it comes a lot from the service. It comes a lot from the like factor. Comes a lot from the community. It comes from the one-on-one touch. It comes from a once a week check-in. It comes from showing that you care. It comes from being able to build a culture of people who are like in love with the brand that you built, who are feeling part of a community. And so I think it's, once you have all of those things, ascension becomes a lot easier. So I think that's kind of what it comes down to, if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, what a powerful word, ascension. Imagine if we were aware of that term, what it looks like, what it feels like, as it shows up in us and then transcends through our business, through our team, in the entrepreneurial journey. What if we made ascension a priority? How would you describe ascension, and how can you make sure that as your business climbs, as it ascends, so do you? How can we make ascension an integral component that is always in both sides, the personal and the professional?
So I'll talk about the strategic version first, and then we can kind of get into the mindset as well, if that's okay. So Ascension, LTV, they're similar, right? So Ascension is someone is from a business perspective and then we'll kind of get into maybe mindset, spiritual as well. From a business perspective, Ascension is being able to take that person onto the next level of program that's going to get them excited for the next goal, the next thing that you're going to be able to create. And that creates a higher LTV, lifetime value for that client. And so the goal is, what are the things that keep clients staying, wanting to come back, wanting to show up? And they're what I said, they're very simple things that a lot of us don't do. So I'll give you some examples in that. Sometimes once we start, maybe in your first 10 clients, it's easy. You can have that one-on-one touch. But once you get to 50 or 60, you start wanting to do, how do I automate these messages? How do I automate this kind of community vibe? And there's no automation in that, because people pay attention when they know you care, right? Oh. There's a quote that no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care.
So true.
That stays, right? If I know you care, I'm going to care because I feel like I can feel your care. And so it's the same when it comes to customer relationships and being able to maintain that. And what happens a lot of the time with entrepreneurs is that level of care or service goes substantially down, because now they're trying to create systems and automations that are not at the same level as when they were one-on-one helping that client, right? And so it's about maintaining those levels of service. So they initially come in for the result, but they stay for the connection and community. So for example, if someone wants to lose weight, they're coming to lose 20 pounds, but they're staying because they built a relationship with you and the community, and they're really enjoying their vibe and their new swag and all the things that come with it. So it's really understanding why people come in and then why people stay in the first place. So I think that's the first part. And then in terms of ascension on a personal level, right, to be able to essentially grow yourself to that next level that your business is growing, I think that really depends on the entrepreneur and how they want to do it, right? I think there are a variety of ways of doing it. I have my own ways of doing it. And so I think it's learning based on where you're at in the business, what needs to grow within you, and exploring, and then getting very curious on the things that are holding you back in X or Y period of growth, or wherever you're struggling in your business, how that's reflecting in you and showing up in your body, and being able to really explore that, be really curious about that, and then taking action based off of how you like to take action, whether that's meditation, whether that's psychedelics, whether that's journaling, whatever it is for you. You know what works for you. And if you don't, try different things. Like when I first started, I was like, first thing I did was like, as an entrepreneur, and like, I like knew nothing. And I listened to like 100 podcasts, and everyone was like, you gotta have this like really awesome morning routine. And everyone had a different routine. And I was like, wait, like, should I journal? Like, should I meditate? Like, should I do a bunch of drugs?
What's the formula?
Like, this really rich entrepreneurs doing all these drugs. Should I be doing that as like going to work? Like, and so all these different things. And I just tried different things. And I was like, wait, none of this works, but this works, for example. And so just kind of like finding like, what is it that works for you? Be incredibly curious about yourself, your limitations, your traumas. Be willing to explore if you want to, but also really focus on like, what is the end result that I'm looking for in doing this, and enjoy the process. Like, don't take it too seriously.
So true. You got to have fun along the way. You might even reach a point or choose to go about it like I do and actually schedule in fun, put in downtime, put in, when I see too much white space in my calendar or anything that's not already color coded or blocked off, I'm like, all right, I haven't had fun in a while. So let me go ahead and block that off. You got to do it.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. It's, I was at a little weekend conference thing, maybe like a couple of years ago. Bedros Keuilian was one of the speakers. He's an incredible example of what's possible. He's been on the show before, and just anybody interested in fitness business space, definitely check him out. But he was talking about, he was on a roll, basically, almost on like a little bit of a rant about like, go, 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 go. And then he's like, I get asked all the time, Bedros, what do you do for fun? When do you have fun? He's like, I fucking have fun. Look at my calendar. It's Friday from 2 to 7 p.m. with my family. But, if you prioritize and take fun as seriously as you do taking life and your work as serious, I think there is a level of seriousness that you show up with, meaning you respect it. When you carve out time to do these things, the tactics, the professional work, the personal work, when you prioritize it and respect it, you show up giving it your all and are very committed to the version of you that needs to show up there, but also committed to the version that you hope comes out on the other side, or else why would you be there? Why would you be there to progress or to ascend in your work or in your personal life if you didn't care at all? So it was funny. And you got to do it sometimes, because if you don't, life will take it away.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny because I heard one time, I don't know where I heard it from, and I was like, oh yeah, that's a great strategy. And it was like, write down what your values are and what you take the most seriously, and then color coordinate your calendar according to all the things that you do. And then go look at that calendar and see if that's aligned with your values. So if you say your values are family and you're working 12 hours a day, like, are your values like really family, And so it's the same thing with anything like that. So it's kind of good in that sense of like scheduling in everything, including fun or whatever it might be, because it's a very direct assessment, so to speak, of like, is my day-to-day, the micro level of how I'm doing things, which ultimately forms a macro, a reflection of what I say I believe in and stand for. And it's a really easy way to see that.
And, I'll piggyback off of this part right here and say that not only is it important for the things we've been just talking about, but also for quite literally our personal self, for our health, our physiological self. I know you're a big fan of all the biohacks and just finding little ways to improve our physiological biochemical self for performance, athleticism, longevity, general health and wellness, but also so that we can carry that over into our work so that we can show up our best, perform our best. When I actually, probably about a year and a half or so ago, really began to prioritize and schedule in downtime, whether that was weekly or like once every 3 or 4 months, quick overnight weekend trip, whatever that was, of downtime, devoted regular downtime, prioritizing time with friends, family, meaningful people in my life, and also getting outdoors. When those three kind of came together on a regular basis, I began to see a lot of carryover into things like my Whoop right here, my recovery. I was getting better sleep. My HRV shot up like crazy, resting heart rate lowered. I was getting a lot of these physiological manifestations for things that we were just talking about that It's like, this stuff is good for you. Taking the downtime, working on your stress and, being with family is good. Right. But it's hard sometimes if you don't get that feedback of kind of sometimes quantitative versus qualitative data of like, oh, all right, yeah, I'll do this and I'll keep doing this. So that was a great hack and great realization for me. But I'm curious, is there a hack that you have that feeds both your performance and how you can show up and do your most important work, but also is serving your physical self at the same time?
Yeah. So I'll be honest about this. So when it comes to like the biohacks and the quantitative measurements of that kind of stuff, I've done that. And here's what happens for me. So when I do something like that, I get obsessed. And so then I get obsessed because it's my personality. My personality is intense. It's all or nothing. I want to know everything. And if my sleep is off and I didn't get enough REM, like there's like 10 things I can do tonight to make sure like I win, like I get it better the next day. It's like almost trying to beat myself. And so I get so obsessed with it that it's almost contrary to what it's supposed to be doing.
Counterproductive.
And so, yeah. And so I just kind of learned about myself in that way is that, all right, cool. So things that are like that level of measurement, I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to do it based off of what generally feels good for me and what feels good to me. And so I know for me, it feels really good to meditate in the morning. I know for me, it feels really good to do my red light because then I'm like, I'm looking good. My skin's going to be so good. I'm going to stay young forever.
Look good, feel good, baby. Yeah.
Yeah, I got this covered. And that's it. I have my coffee and I feel good, And so I think it's just finding out like really based on your personality type. And I thought it was crazy to be honest about this. And I heard a few other people who were like, yeah, this is how I get as well. And so just learning, hey, is this helping you? Or is this ultimately like potentially impeding? Right. And so for me, it was. And so I just went off of what feels good and the things that I know are functional for me specifically. And so that I just kind of stuck with that.
I'm with you. Amen. I mean, like you were saying earlier, especially in the beginning of our journey, we become very curious about what are all these other people doing? What are the authors, the podcasters, the Instagrammers, like anybody, anywhere that we look to as a model for, I want that, or I want a piece of that. Like, how are you doing it? What are you doing? What are the hacks? What's the morning ritual? Tell me the secret formula for the best morning routine that's going to give me enlightenment and multiple six figures. That would be pretty dope if we could nail it down. But ultimately it has to be, like you said, which is a great example of no, yes, no, yes, yes, no, yes. Mm-hmm. And you have to then be aware of like what just intuitively aligns with you, what is the most natural thing for you to do and to maintain, but also then paying attention to quantitative data is great. A wearable, a Whoop, an Apple Watch, whatever. Maybe you got an Oura Ring or any other smart device, but really ultimately qualitatively, like how are you feeling? How are you feeling? Like literally, what is your first feeling and emotion when you wake up? What is the feeling and emotion you have when you sit down to do the work, when you step away from the work, when you get on the sales call, get off the sales call, when you do all these things, paying attention to the feeling and emotional state associated to the professional side of things, for me, has just ultimately pay dividends. And those are the things that I really pay attention to and keep. I can pick up a book, listen to a podcast and learn all the new hacks all the time, but it's just like, damn, is there another thing that I need to try? Or am I just reaching? Am I just searching because I'm not happy with something else? Let me lean into that. Why am I not happy? Why do I think I'm not performing? Versus really looking at the data and the qualitative self, the biofeedback of, no, Chase, you're good. There's just something else. Quit looking for a distraction,
Right. And I think it also comes down to like, well, what's the ultimate goal? So a lot of biohacking stuff, not always, but a lot of the time it's okay, cool. So the goal of this is longevity. It's to live longer. It's to feel better. And so if the goal is longevity and we're spending an hour and a half in the gym a day, and we're spending half an hour doing the biohacking and the lights and the eating the right things and measuring our assessment and getting the right pillow and the chili bed or whatever it's called.
Wait, I feel like you're just describing my life. It's like, can you see my home? What's
You got it all figured out. And then you do all that, but then that's like, let's say that's 2 hours a day going back to the gym. What's that? Like an extra half hour to that. Now you're spending like 12, 13, 14 hours a week on that. That ends up being 10, 15% of your life. And by doing those things, you're going to save an extra 15% of your life. So ultimately, you could have not done those things and still got the same result. And
there we go back to this aspect of being counterproductive again, is it?
Right. What's the goal? It goes down to what's the goal. And I'm not trying to be, I'm not trying to be petty about it, but it's also like, well, what is the goal and what is that achieving? And if this is something I love doing, it just makes me feel better. I don't care about this or I don't care about that, then it's fine. It's the same thing as, bodybuilders, they're ultimately shortening their lives by being that big, right? And they probably, most of them probably know that, but they do it because they like it, because they like being jacked and all of the benefits for them that brings, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's understanding what am I doing this for? And is it worth it for what I perceive that it brings into my life?
Powerful questions, powerful questions to ask yourself at the beginning of your journey, in the middle, and dare I even say routinely put that in, maybe make it part of your weekly, monthly personal checklist. Asking that question can really recenter you and remind you of what you're doing, how you're doing it, and why, and then be able to really look at, all right, what have I been doing with my time? Am I doing all the things because I think that's what I'm supposed to do, or am I actually accomplishing what I wanted to do? Where can those two live in harmony for damn sure? Mm-hmm. Well, I'm curious, as we're kind of getting towards the end here, Sarah, I first just want to say again, thank you so much for coming on the show. Sarah is a personal friend of mine, we met several years ago, actually at a live coaching event, business coaching event. And we've had your partner on the show, Hansika, just two incredible, powerful entrepreneurs, kicking ass and taking names on a regular basis. I'll make sure to have Hansika's information and podcast episode listed down in the show notes, as well as everything that you do as well. Future thinking a little bit now.
Yeah.
I'm no economist. I'm no financialist. I don't math good. And I hardly ever even turn on the news, whether it's good or bad. I don't know. But, I hear these things going on, at least here in America. Currently, Sarah's down in Colombia, that the economy is a little iffy. Uh-huh. There are whispers of recession, whispers of a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. And when we hear, whether they're rumors, half truths, whole lies, or the full truth, something that can stir up something in us that makes us scared, that makes us worried about our future in our business, with our job, with our side hustle, that can stir up fear, worry, concern financially. What is the mindset we need to have to get ahead of that? To get ahead of no matter what comes down the road, I am going to make sure that I am prepared for myself, for my business, and to get ahead of the questions and concerns and potential scarcity of the people that I'm trying to sell, I'm trying to retain, because it's what I need for my livelihood, but also I know what I have to offer is going to continue to serve them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is a harder question for me because I totally don't think like that at all. I never have. I don't worry. I don't prepare for recessions. I'm probably too little. I've always been like on the other side of the spectrum where I'm like, I'll figure it out. It'll be fine.
You're in good company.
It always has been fine.
You're in good company. Yeah. But not everybody is like that. Not everybody is like that.
Yeah. And so in my mind, I'm going to figure it out, whatever comes. I always have, I always will. I don't worry about that. I worry about lots of things, but that's not one of them. On the other end, I think one thing I can give you as an example is during COVID, which was literally a 2-year period, and we're just on the tail end of it, hopefully, is we had our biggest amount of business growth. And I think part of the reason for that, and that's a time where people were scared, people were staying at home, people weren't working, there wasn't wages, and there was a recession per se during that time period. And so I think it comes down to there are certain types of businesses that are recession proof. And I think that there are certain things that people will continue to buy no matter what. And so certain things that are of necessity. And I think that if you can provide that value and those types of things, that you will never really struggle in that way. Should you be prepared to a level? Sure, I'm probably the wrong person to ask. Should you save? Should you have X, Y, Z things that are going to help you, I'm sure. But for me, when it comes down to it, I think there are certain skill sets that will always be recession-proof. I lose everything and I'm going to be able to make it back because I have the skill proof, like all of that. And I think if you're able to build those skill sets, you're going to continuously be able to not struggle and be successful. And so something that I always say is, if I, went back and lost everything, and I never want to because I've been fully broke and I never want to feel that again. But if I literally lost everything and started all over again, I know I would be able to, because I now have the skills that I didn't then have that actually will consistently for the rest of my life be able to make me money. And so if you have that skill, even if you lost everything, nothing can really stop you from doing that. And I think just that thought and that knowing is comfort in and of itself.
Could not agree more. And it reminds me of this phrase, this mentality that I had back in the military, and pretty much everybody I know, it's a little phrase that goes, if you stay ready, you never need to get ready. And so it doesn't matter what the job requires. It doesn't matter what the mission is to a certain degree. That's why we train. That's why we put in the reps. That's why we make a priority to stay a sponge and to learn things and to apply things and to keep our physical, mental, emotional, spiritual selves as ready as possible so that we make ourselves as fail-proof as possible, as recession-proof as possible. And that absolutely cascades out if we're implementing all these amazing things that you shared with us today into our business, into our endeavors. At least that's what I believe personally.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And I can give you a very quick example before we finish off. And I used to date a guy and he was a police officer, and he was very like the opposite of me in terms of preparation. So he was always like preparing for the next earthquake and all of these things. And he had the backpack ready and all of that in case something happened. But with that level of preparation, almost always, at least in my experience, comes a level of stress, a level of anxiety, and even sometimes a level of depression. And so for me, the trade-off of being constantly prepared, if a tornado happens, will he be more prepared for me and have more food for 5 days? Sure. But for me, the trade-off of having that level of preparation and that level of anxiety isn't worth the extra preparation that I'm going to have should maybe something happen one day. And so I think it just really comes to, again, really the thought process around that and how you choose or want to live. And then, like you said, if you're already preparing your whole life, then no need to really prepare.
Exactly. So good. So good. Thank you for sharing that. Well, it brings me to my final question, and I think it's a perfect little segue. Living a life ever forward. When you hear those two words, what does that mean to you? How would you describe that? How would you define that here today?
So I think when you say that, the first thing that comes to my mind is just constant growth, constant learning, and constant curiosity. Because, the whole Tony Robbins quote is, if you're not growing, you're dying. And I truly have lived that. And I believed it, because if I am not feeling like I'm working towards the next thing, if I'm not doing the things that are going to get me to the next level, whether that's in business or my personal or my relationship, I don't feel good. I feel my happiest when I'm growing and when I'm learning and when I'm being challenged. And I think I like to put myself in positions where that's constantly happening. So I think if I were to go back to what that means, is just constantly seeking growth, constantly feeling curious and open to learn about yourself, and just the knowing that you still don't know anything, because that knowing in and of itself will help you explore all the things that you don't know.
And then knowing without doing is the same thing as not knowing. So it's time to learn, and then time to apply, and time to integrate. That's for damn sure. So Sarah, beautiful answer. Thank you so much. We're going to have all of your information down in the show notes for everybody, but where can they go right now if they want to connect with you, learn more about the work that you do, and how you're taking over the world every day in your own unique way?
Yeah. So they can just find me on Instagram. So it's @Saffari Sarah. Safari, like you're going on a safari, but with two F's. So Saffari, and then Sarah with an H, Sarah.
Beautiful. Well, merci, Sarah Jones. Great to see you. Sorry, we just sort of kind of crossed paths, but didn't really down in your part of the world. But
so close.
Who knows? I mean, it just takes a little twist of my arm to get back down there. But I say that now. This time, having to travel to Colombia from the West Coast was a little much, a little tricky, but worth it for ceviche.
Yeah, I mean, I'm coming to Vancouver, so I'll be closer to LA than when I'm in Colombia. So maybe that
way. All right.